What's up, everybody? It's time for my next vlog. And for this vlog, I'm going to open it up with a question. That question is, who is a better neighbor? Is it you? Is it Donald Trump? Or is it a member of Antifa? So this past Sunday in Sunday school class, we went over the parable of the Good Samaritan. And the Good Samaritan, I was surprised by how political that parable was. As I was reading it, I was realizing, there are a lot of similarities between that era and what was going on then in the politics with the people involved in the parable and what we see a lot today between the politics of the people on the right and the left. So I just wanted to kind of draw a comparison between what was happening then and now and show how crazy similar it is and how I think we can learn a lot from it. Disclaimer, my last vlog and this one, I'm talking pretty heavily about Jesus. And those of you that are watching this, if you are watching it saying, dude, why is he talking so much about Jesus? Why does he think he's good enough to talk about Jesus? Or, it's not like he has his stuff together. Or, why should he preach at us? You know what? My response to that is I don't have everything together. And that's precisely what the message of Jesus is about. Jesus says that he has not come to save the righteous, but the sinners. And that it's not the healthy that needs the doctor, it's the sick. He said that if you think that you can see, then your guilt remains. If you thought that you were blind, then you'd still be innocent. But as it is, you claim that you can see, so your guilt remains. Jesus is for the people that recognize their errors and their flaws. And if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in Jesus at all, I totally respect you for that. And just hear me out that when I show you this stuff, I think that you got to recognize the fact that there is wisdom to what Jesus says, whether or not you believe in him as God. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tell this parable, and then I'm going to give you some background of it and why it is so crazy political and how it's got a lot of similarities to with what we've got going on right now in our political discourse. And then I'm going to retell the parable in modern terms, in modern American culture. So let's get going on it. All right. The parable of the Good Samaritan starts off in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. The parable of the Good Samaritan. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" Jesus replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this, and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii. Side note, a denarii is basically worth a day's wages. So he gave him 2 days' worth of wages and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have." Jesus then asked, "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." All right, so I want to give you some background on who these characters are to set this up to show you just how impactful this is. So the expert of the law that Jesus is talking to Him and then two of the characters in the story, the priest and the Levite. They are probably from the same ilk. The expert in the law is most likely a Levite. He is most likely a scribe of the law of the Old Testament, the first 5 books, the Torah. That's what they based their laws off of. Now, a priest is also from the line of the Levites. And the Levites started with Aaron as the first original high priest. Aaron was the brother of Moses. So going back to Aaron, the bloodline of his direct descendants, that's who the Levites are. So only they are able to go into the temple. Only they are able to conduct sacrifices. The Levites are the only ones that are able to do scribe work. And so in the Israel community, in the Jewish community around the time of Jesus, these men were the most prestigious ones. They were held in honor and revered as the holiest. And essentially, if there was a class system, they were at the top of it. Now, the Samaritans, on the other hand, the Samaritans were considered essentially half-breeds to the Jewish community. The Jewish community and the Samaritans have the same ancestors. Israel, back about 500 years prior to all of this time where Jesus is at, they were attacked by Assyria. And the northern kingdom of Israel was conquered by Assyria. And many of the people in the northern kingdom of Israel were taken captive by the Assyrians. Now, as that happened, some of the Assyrians settled in where Israel used to be, and some of the Israelites in the northern kingdom were taken to Assyria. Over the course of time, their practices, their religion, their bloodlines got mingled. Assyrians married with Israelites. Israelites adopted religious elements of the Assyrians. And so you got them, and then you got a second tribe. The tribe of Judah is I believe, the southern kingdom of Israel. They were also taken captive, but it was by the Babylonians, and so their timelines were different. But at a particular point, the Judeans, who were the ones of the southern kingdom, they were released and were allowed to go back to build Israel again, to build Jerusalem again. So they come back to do that, and they run into the Samaritans, who were the bloodline of the Israelites who was taken captive by the Assyrians. They meet them, and the Samaritans come to realize that the Judeans are trying to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. The Samaritans, they offer to help. The Judeans, however, when they see what has become of these Israelites that have blended and intermingled with these Assyrians, and they see how the religion that they shared as a nation at the beginning had been completely changed and, in their view, corrupted, along with the bloodline, where the Jewish people were not to intermarry with other tribes or nations. But these Israelites did, from the northern kingdom. They became known as the Samaritans, and when the Judeans saw this, they said, "You guys are corrupt. You guys have a tainted bloodline. We don't want your help. We don't want you guys to be involved with us." And so they rejected their help in building the new temple in Jerusalem. So the Samaritans were like, okay, seriously? If that's how it's going to be, then how about this? We're going to block you from doing anything. We're going to oppose you every step of the way, because they feel spurned. They feel like, all right, we're still of your same lineage, and you guys think that you're that much better than us. So what they did was they sided with the Assyrians in opposing the Judeans from rebuilding Jerusalem. So from that point forward, there was complete animosity between the Samaritans and the Jews. The Judeans, better known as the Jews by the time Jesus came on the scene. At some point in history, starting with the Assyrians, where the Samaritans sided with the Assyrians, who were the enemies of the Judeans, the Samaritans, in addition to that, sided with the Persians, and they sided with the Romans as well. These are three very large nations of enemies of the Judeans. So we get to the point of where Jesus is expressing this parable to a pure line Judean, now known as just simply a Jew. This expert of the law who definitely hasn't been tainting or corrupting the scripture in his impression. According to this guy thinks he is holy because of how pure he is. He thinks he's better than everyone. And by the time that the Judeans and the Samaritans are together in this culture, they absolutely despise each other. So the fact that in this parable that Jesus is talking to a pure line Judean, and then Jesus takes the hero of the story and makes the hero of this story a Samaritan. That is like big time, like driving it in, because Jesus knows who he's talking to. Jesus is very familiar with the Pharisees. The Pharisees, the experts of the law, they're all in the same gang. They all think that they're better than everybody. They take the law because they know it so well, and they use it to basically weigh that law down on them and keep themselves in power and look down on everyone from those positions of power, especially the Samaritans. So what Jesus did here in this parable is absolutely genius. So you've got this expert of the law. Essentially, what he's trying to do is he asks Jesus a question after explaining to Jesus, showing, how much he knows the law. Well, I know what it takes to get eternal life. I'm going to just ask you what you think and then have you ask me so that way I can show you my expert understanding of the law. So that's when he's like, love the Lord your God. And then he says, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus is like, yeah, you got it right. But then that's when the expert says, okay, love my neighbor as myself. And who is my neighbor? He's trying to justify himself because this guy knows that he isn't helping everybody. He's definitely not helping the Samaritans. So he asks the question, who is my neighbor? And Jesus' genius response to this, instead of answering the man's question, Jesus instead answers it by addressing the man who is asking the question instead of addressing the question itself. So you got this guy saying, and who is my neighbor? Who am I supposed to be a neighbor to? So when Jesus then points out that the Samaritan of these three, so you've got a priest, you've got a Levite, they walk right on past the guy that's beaten and bloodied on the side of the road. But the lowly, despised Samaritan, the one that you can't stand, he's the one that goes and helps this guy. And then Jesus asks him, who is the neighbor to this guy? Instead of saying, who are you supposed to be a neighbor to? Jesus said, who was the neighbor to this man? So he gets the expert of the law to admit, in this case, that the Samaritan did a more right thing than did the priest or the Levite, his own people. Now, the reason why this is very applicable for today, I'm going to retell this in modern American fashion, and I want you guys to make this comparison. I think you'll get it pretty quick. So, just briefly, the people on the right in our culture pretty much can't stand the people on the left. The people on the left definitely can't stand the people on the right. They call each other racist. They call each other dishonest, fraudulent, people that don't love our country, everything you can think of. So with that context in mind, I'm going to retell this in two different scenarios. Let's pretend that Jesus, who knows who he's talking to, Jesus is talking to, in this case, the expert of the law happens to be a diehard right-wing guy. So, a man is attacked, robbed, left half dead along the side of the street. A Bible-believing, Republican-voting pastor of a large congregation sees this man lying on the side of the street, walks right on past him. A second guy comes along, a Republican politician. Let's say it's Donald Trump. Donald Trump sees this man on the side of the street, walks right on past. A third person comes along. This guy happens to be a member of Antifa. But this member of Antifa looks and sees this man lying in the ditch, goes over and helps him. Jesus would ask this right-winger then, who do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? Okay, that's scenario one. Scenario two, the expert of the law to whom Jesus is telling the parable is a left-wing extremist. A man is attacked, robbed, and left for dead along the side of the street. A reporter from MSNBC sees the man lying there, pretends he didn't, walks right on past on the other side. The second one comes along. Let's say it's a Democratic politician. Let's say it's a member of the squad. Let's say this Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She sees the man lying there. She walks right on past. But a third person comes along. This third person happens to be a red MAGA hat wearing, Republican voting, straight, white, male from Alabama. Sees this man on the side of the road, dying, and he goes and helps him. Jesus asks, who do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? So in both scenarios, the expert of the law from the original telling of the Good Samaritan was still correct. His answer was correct. The one who shows mercy is the one that is the neighbor. So I love what Jesus did here. He's taking political sides, factions, and he is obliterating all of that and showing that it's all nonsense when it comes down to the fundamental acts of human kindness, love, and respect that we're supposed to show each other because we are all humans. Jesus levels the playing field against this expert who thinks he knows everything, who thinks he's always right and that they're always wrong. He levels the field by showing that this guy who is completely different politically from him, he is doing a more right thing by actually showing an act of love, showing an act of being a neighbor to somebody that he sees he knows nothing about. The important thing about this is when you see that this guy, this expert of the law, he needed to get knocked down a couple pegs to see that it's not about the status that you hold. It's not about the titles. It's not about what you know as far as if you think that you're right about everything in your ideology and in your beliefs. All of those things are secondary if you aren't even helping the people that are around you. There is a level of humanity, that of care for each other that is deeper than that. And when we start to realize that we are no better than anybody else, and in some cases we are worse than the ones that we despise the most, then we can start to see that we are all the same, that we are all humans, we are all sharing that, and that everyone is our neighbor. And so we are to be the neighbors to those. It's not about trying to find out how I can get out of doing something that's the right thing because I think that I know better than other people. That doesn't let you off the hook from just seeing the basic fundamental issues in humanity. So I've got one last thing, another situation that Jesus found himself in that I want to share with you guys. And this is from the book of John. And Jesus is chilling and he finds himself in a situation where the Pharisees, the people of the law, bring before him a prostitute, this woman who's been caught in the act of adultery. Let me go ahead and read. The teachers of religious law and Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd. Teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? They were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him, but Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. Now, some people think that like Jesus is like writing something profound with his finger in the dust while they're doing this. I don't think that. I think that what was going on was these experts of the law, they bring this woman and they're like, Jesus, this woman did this, and they're hurling out accusations, and Jesus is like, I'm playing in the dust, playing in the dirt. Are you guys still talking? Okay, are you guys done talking? And they're like, finally, well, what do you say? And Jesus finally like, all right, whichever one of you hasn't sinned, throw the first stone. And then he goes back and he starts playing in the dirt again. There's not record that after that any of the accusers say anything else. It's like Jesus just mic dropped, just and I'm out. Whichever one of you has not sinned, cast the first stone. And they all left because they know that they all had. They know that they're no better. So, verse 9, when the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. The end. What Jesus is all about is about showing that we are all flawed. We all have our issues. And when you humble yourself and realize that, that's when you get lifted up. That's when you can actually make a difference in the lives of other people and in a transformation of yourself. Because you have to realize that you've always got room to grow. There is no one that we can cast stones at. None of us. None of us are perfect. Close, not even close to it. So I've got one final question that I want to ask. There's a lot of hate going around in our culture, and hate will never cure hate. Which side are you on? Are you on the side of towards people that you disagree with? Are you spewing out hate and pointing fingers and hating them for their hate? Or are you loving the people that hate you? Yes, it's hard to do. It's hard to love people, but love is the only thing that's going to heal hate. Hate will only breed more hate. Love is the only thing that will heal hate. And then grace and mercy, like the mercy that the man showed to the robber. Mercy is how we forgive hate. Now, a better question, and a final question, I'm just going to leave it with this. Which side do you hope that other people are on towards you? Do you hope that they are on the side of hate towards you for the things that you've done wrong? Because when you're honest with yourself, when we're honest, we know that we've all done things wrong. Or are you on the side of, are you hoping that they towards you are on the side of grace and mercy towards you? That's all I got for this one. Feel free to check out my page, Believe You Me. It's on my Facebook page. Be my friend on Facebook. And then also subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I look forward to talking to you guys again. I love you. And until next time, be good. Talk to you later.